Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Hello everyone, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I hope this video finds you in good health and secure. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Hopefully you'll permit me to do that. We just finished a treatise on protecting the nation, and I elaborated on that concept as being something endemic. I don't know if is the right word. Built into the practice of Buddhism, that as we as individuals self-practice to bring our mind to awaken to Buddha, the true nature of all phenomena, and that ability to perceive and experience that truth, for lack of a better word, that reality, the real, by extension, come on, software. By extension, that self-enlightenment provides a powerful influence to everything around us. And by coursing through this samsaric life in a bodhisattva way, maintaining our Buddha mind, our Buddha-ness, which is to help others or inspire others or simply influence others to emulate that same goal, mission, practice, right? Eventually, as that influence grows from one person to another, to others, through others, and the teaching grows, then the will toward violence, or the will through what amounts to, in Buddhism, self-destruction, and I mean that in the sense of destroying your potential enlightenment, your potential Buddhahood, your potential bodhisattvahood, to be even more accurate. Keeping in mind that Buddha is a state that we can only be aware of experiencing. That's why awakening, enlightenment, is intrinsic in the language of it, that's only something which occurs in this samsaric life, in this sentient body, this sentient mind, with this apparatus to emerge that sentient mind. So Buddhahood, experiencing Buddhahood, only happens as a sentient being. It's over when you die. Buddha, the nature of all phenomena, obviously continues, but not via the experience of the human or sentient being. Kind of obvious, really, but it's important to stop and consider that, because that's a very, very specific understanding that isn't in pre-Lotus Sutra teachings. This idea that Buddha and Buddha-ness is only something to be attained elsewhere is a great misunderstanding, a great misreading of Shakyamuni's teachings. He never said that. He never he couched this understanding in local lore and teaching for people who weren't ready to understand it. But by the time he got to the Lotus Sutra, he said, you guys understand now. You're capable of understanding this. Buddhahood is only something you can experience in the here and now, because it's always been here and it will always be here. But it won't be experienced or made aware as the wonder that it is outside of your mind. This is where many sects go off track here, and they start deifying the mind, or this idea that can't possibly be us lowly human beings who can instantiate this amazing state. But yes, this is what Shakyamuni has been saying all along. Again, the purpose of Buddhism is to live this life fully, not to get out of it as soon as possible. It's a realization of what life is truly a manifestation of, the whole process of manifestation. Yeah? Science is still trying to figure it out. And they're stuck on the quantum gravity and quantum entanglement and how particles go in and out of existence, and the speed of light, which has nothing to do with light, by the way. It's about the limitation of our perception. It's what it actually is. The speed of light is an earthly limitation on measurement, on what we're able to and how we're able to understand time, space, time. When in Buddhism, that's the whole illusion. That's why we're stuck there. So while you're in this illusion, perceive the truth of the matter, and this illusion no longer has power to influence your emotions, your attachments, your desires, your fears, right? That's the whole ball game. That's what Siddhartha set out to figure out. And he did. And when he found out and was aware of it, he thought, oh man, this is just a switch we need to flip. And he tried to explain that to people, and they just looked at him like, you ever see those pictures of you whistle to your cute little dog, and it looks at you and, right? What? So Shakyamuni had to spend a lot of time getting people's minds up to snuff so that they would get it, that they would go, oh, aha, right? Anyway, so all of that is to say that when you attain, or even partially attain, just moments of that, it becomes, I was going to say painfully obvious, but that's kind of a contradiction in light of what we're talking about. But it becomes very obvious that everything we stress about is caused by our own delusion. And so if more and more people understand that, and then there's less and less desire to control and manipulate and fear. And so obviously, over a span of a family, a town, a country, a world, the idea is that the more people that realize this, the less tendency there will be in those lower paths of existence where man and mankind wants to beat people up or manipulate them, or the avarice, greed, and wanting, or beat them up because they're afraid. All of those things, they start to evaporate, and over time, less and less war, less and less aggression and fear, therefore less and less discontentment, right? And therefore, the world is happier. Civilizations are more restful. And what does that sound like and look like? What we aspire to, something we call peace. But in Buddhism, it's not really peace. It's equanimity. When everyone feels maximally expressed, then there's no need for greed or jealousy or possession or taking away or losing. All of that is delusion. So in that respect, we are all equal. That doesn't mean we're all homogeneous. It's not that at all. The differences remain, but the differences are no longer judged as inferior, superior, must have, must get rid of. You see the mechanism? When you can celebrate differences and go, wow, that's really cool. You know, how important would a flower be, or how beautiful would a rose be if every flower on the planet was rose? Oh yeah, flowers. We wouldn't even call them roses. They'd just be flowers. They're cool. But the fact that they come in so many different forms and sizes and colors, that's what adds to their excitement. Look at what flower is doing now. Yeah? Do you see how it's just a perceptive shift? So, I thought I looked through this one book. I could have looked through others. But I found this this partial document of Nichiren that is being kept and is translated here via this translation group. I always forget what they're called. They don't make it easy on me, I'm telling you. The Nichiren Shu Overseas Propagation Promotion Association. What a mouthful. Anyway. So they're yet another group. I've got a book here from the BDK, the Tripitaka people, and I'm not going to read that now. But they've got a lot of the earlier Agama and Hinayana sutras, and they're interesting to read too. So maybe we'll read one of those. I warn you, though, they sound a lot more like a witch's brew of... especially these translations, which I wish I knew all the world languages so I could met that stuff out. But even in the translation, it just sounds so... There's nothing wrong specifically other than everything's made to sound mystical and ooh-ah. It just isn't. It's just a lack of understanding, right? So anyway, this Shejisho, or... Selecting the Right Time, a tract by Nichiren, the Buddha's disciple, Buddhism and the Time. I thought, given our world of unrest today, with wars all over the place that we're so bored with, I should say, the royal we includes the corporate media and the politics and the propaganda, and it's just endless, right? But suffice it to say, there's this tremendous amount of unrest in the world today, and politicians like that. They like to sow unrest because they have power in that. Oh, I'll fix it for you, right? The great game of politics. And the politicians they've drunk the Kool-Aid, so they love to create fake arguments and stoke fires as though that is their responsibility. They've forgotten all about anything benevolent for the betterment of society or individuals at all. They just cast all that aside. How can I stoke up the fervor in the rooster fight of humanity to make financial gains and get more for me? That's the world we live in. It's insane. Yes, some of us are more sane, but don't forget what surrounds you. As Buddhists, we're trying to influence that toward equanimity. So don't forget, when it starts to encroach on us, we're losing the battle. And this is why propagation of the Lotus Sutra is so vital, right? For the planet, for you and I, for equanimity, for a happy life. So I'm going to read this introduction by this translation association people crew. There's a whole bunch of them. I listed them before. And it'll give us a little bit of context around the writing of this. And I know some of you really like to have that. I try to provide it in snippets as I talk. But let's go ahead and read it ahead of this so you'll have a firm idea of when Nichiren, in his lifetime, decided to write this treatise or this writing. I'll let them tell you. Nichiren Shonin wrote the Senji Sho in the 6th month of the first year in the Kenji period, 1275, when he was 53 years old. So he wasn't a kid anymore, right? He'd been doing this for a while. The original manuscript of this essay, designated an important cultural asset of Japan, is known to have consisted of 110 pages, of which 107 exist today at the Myohoke-ji Temple at Tamazawa in Mishima City, Shinjuoka Prefecture. Of the missing parts, altogether 2 pages are kept separately at 4 temples, including the Ryuhanji Temple of Kyoto. The foreign invasion of Japan predicted by Nichiren in his Risho and Kokuron proved true in the 10th month of the 11th year of the Bunei period, 1274. So this is the year after. So he had predicted in Risho and Kokuron, and we've talked about this before, and we'll read it. It's also a long document. But that was a remonstration, a document that he sent specifically to the ruling clans and the government, as we've discussed before, the shogunate, to demonstrate to them with logic, with Buddhist sutras, what was happening to the nation, the famine, the invasions, the earthquake, and so forth, were not separate from the conduct of the people, which is the theme so far, isn't it? That our singular behavior in mass affects all of the environment. Remember, we're not separate. The environment, it's like saying that a fish can exist out of water. It cannot. The water is a reflection of the fish, and the fish is the life in the water. They are interconnected, just as you and I are, to not only the air we breathe and the earth we walk on, but the consciousness of life, the very fabric of life, the Buddha, which is throughout all phenomena, right? Once the formations happen, the energy with work, formations happen, Buddha is present, because Buddha is that I don't know what word to use. It's not a condition of it. It's the very process. The birds are trying to come in again. I'll read to you outside later. Anyway, but the very impetus for energy to collect, the formations, is itself the foundation of all life. And the understanding of that process is Buddha. You see? But understanding doesn't have consciousness. Understanding doesn't have sentience. In other words, it is not consciousness. It is the nature of energy, potential to manifest. Period. But that's a huge thing. Without that, energy is just quiescent. Potential never manifests. The fact that it can is only due to the fact that potential as a label for it, is manifestable. So how does it, the foundation of all phenomena, begin? Through this effort, through this will, this instantiation of a process from which everything that ever exists or will begins. So you can understand that as Buddha, but don't misunderstand that it is the thing called Buddha. It is not. We're just pointing at the moon. Buddha is your mind's experience of that knowing, your knowledge, your experience of that process at that level. That is Buddha. So, again, we're speaking in a duality here. Buddha, you can read in all of these sutras, is, and here's these words again, eternal. Or what's better than eternal, actually, is the actual words that time without beginning, and time without end, and timelessness. Because the only place time is experienced is in our minds. A rock does not experience time. Wow, you guys are insistent. I don't know if you can hear that, but they're really trying to get through the glass. Sorry. So I don't know how many times and how many ways I can say this, but Buddha only exists in the perceptive mind. And the mind only exists as an extension, an emergent property of this apparatus, which is the whole universe. I don't mean just you and I. You and I are a culmination of innumerable processes that allow for sentience. In other words, some combination of energies that provide for the ability, the experience of the whole thing. Buddha. You see? That potential, now if you talk about it as potential, that's existed from the very moment potential expressed. Anything. But is it perceivable? Is it a thing to point to? Is it a thing to hold? Emptiness, not there. Even as we experience it in our minds, it's all it is a moment of clarity. After another moment, another moment, another moment. Yeah. The realms. The 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. Keep coming back to that. So, parts of this document are gone. Some are kept in other places. When the Mongol troops invaded Western Japan, at this critical moment, Nichiren could not sit and watch Japan fall, and began writing this essay. In it, Nichiren declared that the only way to save Japan from annihilation was through the Lotus Sutra, and that Nichiren himself was none other than the practicer of the Lotus Sutra entrusted by Shakyamuni Buddha to spread its teachings and save all people in the latter age of degeneration. And in this, he would be referring to the Bodhisattva characterization, right, of, is it superior practices or Jyogyo? Yeah. At the beginning of this writing, Nichiren discusses the right time, maintaining that the spread of the Lotus Sutra depends on the time. Nichiren describes the history of Buddhism after the death of the Buddha during the 3 ages of the true Dharma, the semblance Dharma, and the latter age of degeneration in the 3 lands of India, China, and Japan to prove that the right time for the spread of the Lotus Sutra is none other than the latter age of degeneration. So he's making a big push, a big argument, a logical argument from the teachings themselves. And remember, all the people of Japan, certainly the shogunate and all of the elite, are Buddhists. They claim Buddhism as their modus of life to justify all of their other actions, earthly actions, right? It's just that they're, as Nichiren keeps pointing out, they've been misled by misunderstandings of what Buddhism is about. They've been misled. And so he's trying to redirect them to the correct teachings of the Lotus Sutra. If only everyone would do that, then we wouldn't be experiencing this whole mess. How parallel is that to our situation today? As the Buddha's messenger entrusted to propagate the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren harshly criticizes those who stand in his way and the evil teachings that confuse people and slander the true Dharma. There it is. If you want to fix the country and stop being invaded and having all this famine and all these problems, which you ultimately are responsible for because you're leading this nation, get your mind right. Right? That's my summation. Censuring the 3 sects of the Pure Land, Zen, and Shingon, especially the last mentioned, Nichiren derogatorily calls such masters as Kukai, Enin, Echin, Anin, Genshin, and Honen parasitic worms in one's bosom. They're eating you alive from the inside out. With unwavering conviction that the great Dharma of the Lotus Sutra is the only way to save Japan from national destruction and that he himself was the messenger of the Buddha, Nichiren dedicated his life to the dissemination of the Lotus teaching. He therefore expects all his disciples and followers to do the same, to be practicers of the Lotus Sutra even at the cost of life. Because what is life otherwise? You might as well just join the rest of the people who think this life is for suffering and for being miserable, and then maybe after you die, there'll be a nice tennis court for you. Right? I mean, he's not being polite and gentle about this. Remember, he lives surrounded by samurai. Well, you're going to coddle the samurai? No, you don't really want to do that, do you, sir? No, you got to wake the samurai up, because the samurai appreciates black and white decisions. That's their training, right? You want to prove to the samurai that the dark is not as good as the light, then turn the light on. Don't get wishy-washy. So this is Nichiren. No bullcrap. He just says it on, and especially when he's talking to the leaders of the nation, because everyone's going to follow them. It's the nature of authoritarianism, right? Authoritarianism. Selecting the right time, attracted by Nichiren, the Buddha's disciple. Not the original Buddha, not the deification, the holy Nichiren, right? Throw that crap out. That's just made up stuff to manipulate you. So I appreciate that, whatever their fallacies in their traditional English westernization of language, so us poor idiot Americans and Westerners, Europeans, can have access to this teaching. Bugs me. At least they get it right. That Nichiren's own words say that he's the Buddha's disciple. He doesn't supersede Shakyamuni Buddha. Listening, Shoshu? Buddhism and time. Now, this is Nichiren's document. Where are we time-wise? Okay, good. Drinking coffee. Sorry. To study Buddhism, first of all, we must know the right time. In the past, the great universal wisdom Buddha appeared in the world, but he did not preach at all for as long as 10 small kalpas. Now he's referring to the expedient means, right? And he knows that even people in the other sects, faulty as they are, all follow this lineage of expedient means. They all know the scholarship of Buddhism. They're just not practicing it. So he uses the same examples they're all familiar with. Clever, right? This is the history of Buddhism. Use the knowledge of the current knowledge of the people you're discussing Buddhism with to get them involved and start thinking in a Buddhist way, so that then when it comes to the critical moment, you can see where they went astray, and more importantly, they can see where they went astray, and you can demonstrate the proper path, and they will understand how that would be said. You're not force-feeding them your thoughts. You're bringing them back to the correct teaching. And this is Buddhism throughout. And this is what Nichiren does. It's pretty amazing. It is said in the Lotus Sutra, chapter 7, on, quote, the parable of the magic city, quote, he sat in meditation for 10 small kalpas. And also, quote, though begged to preach, the Buddha sat in silence because he knew the time was not yet ripe, end quote. Our Lord Shakyamuni Buddha did not expound the Lotus Sutra for more than 40 years. As said in the Sutra, chapter 2, on expedience, it was because, quote, the time was not ripe, end quote. Lao Tzu is said to, what's a good example for this? If you're a parent, when do you choose to talk to your child about, for instance, your daughter about menstruation? When do you talk to your son about masturbation, sex, women, urges? When do you talk to your children about certain milestones they must be guided through, lest they make up their own minds, and they make up their own minds based on their greed and their desires and their, right? So we're a little bit Buddhist as parents. We should be anyway. Taking responsibility for guiding children's formative thoughts about what it is to be of this species responsibly, honorably, with dignity. Right? Having said that, do you pull your 2-year-old aside and start laying all this stuff on them? No, they're not ready to. Even if you did, what they would create in their minds, it could seriously throw a wrench into their whole life experience. It would be irresponsible. It could have devastating consequences. I don't even want to get into it. I'm going to let you think about that. So that's what's meant about the right time. When is it appropriate to talk to your children about certain subjects? When is it appropriate to talk to one another about certain subjects? Don't we do that all the time? And I'm not saying we do it correctly, but we certainly try, don't we? Another reason why to awaken Buddha in your mind, so that, and this is why we always chant before we have these dialogues, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, why we always chant before we do Gongyo recitations. There's a reason for that. Aligning your mind with Buddha, so that as you speak, whatever words you use, or as you listen, whatever mind you use, it's influenced more greatly by your Buddha mind, your mind of equanimity and understanding, rather than your opinionated, emotive, greedy, manipulative, looking for a way out, looking for a way to take advantage, political mind, your samsaric mind of survival and monkey, right? As said in the Sutra, Chapter 2 on expedience, it's because the time was not ripe. Lao Tzu, a great Chinese philosopher, right, is said to have spent as long as 80 years in his mother's womb before he was born. Obviously, you know this is a story, right? Bodhisattva Maitreya, future Lord Buddha of this Saha world, is expected to stay in the inner chamber of the Tushita heaven, Tosotsuten, for as long as 5,670,000,000 years, waiting for the time to attain perfect enlightenment. Probably not next year. As nightingales wait for summer to sing and roosters wait for dawn to crow, even beasts know the time. They understand the cycle of time and the appropriate or inappropriate behavior in relation to time, in sequence. How much more should we choose the right time in practicing Buddhism? Okay. When the Buddha preached the Flower Garland Sutra at the Hall of Enlightenment, various Buddhas appeared in the worlds in the 10 directions, and all great bodhisattvas gathered together. That's, as we know, a statement of who the teaching was directed to or supported by, those involved in the sermon. Moreover, the great king of the Brahma heaven, Indra, and the 4 heavenly kings danced for joy. 8 kinds of gods and semi-gods, such as dragon gods, held their hands together in reverence. The wiser among the ordinary men bent their ears to him, and various bodhisattvas, such as the moon of emancipation, Vimukikandra, who have attained enlightenment during the present life, begged him to preach. So this is about the audience, who he's teaching, who his sermon is for, right? Every sutra is set up this way. There's the attendees who are all there to witness the preaching, the sermon of Shakyamuni Buddha, or whatever Buddha is in the expedient means at the time. And then there's the reference of the audience, for whom this teaching is being told. However, Shakyamuni did not even reveal the names of his 2 most important teachings. Obtaining Buddhahood by men of the 2 vehicles, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, right? We've already read about that. And Shakyamuni's attainment of enlightenment in the eternal pass, Kuonjitsujo. He was still teaching as the man who had attained awakening, not as the Buddha nature, which is something within every extant manifestation of potential. Nor did he expound the fundamental doctrines of the becoming a Buddha with one's present body, Shoshoku Shinjobutsu, and 3,000 existences contained in one thought, Ichinen Sanzen. It was not that he did not speak of those doctrines because no one had the capacity to understand them. It was solely because, as stated in the Lotus Sutra, Chapter 2 on expedience, the time was not ripe. So even those in the audience who would be able to conceptualize those thoughts at the time couldn't do anything with it. They wouldn't realize the potential of it, because the circumstances of the day and age that they were living in wouldn't provide a support for, an opportunity for, an experience of those teachings. It just wasn't the time yet. Just like teaching your 4-year-old about sex. You could say it's not that they wouldn't be able to visualize the concepts in their mind, but oh my goodness, what visualizations would they make? It's not the right time. When the Lotus Sutra was preached on Mount Sacred Eagle, or Vulture Peak, or whatever you want to call it, King Ajatasattu, the most unfilial man in the world, attended the meeting. Even Devadatta, who had abused the true Dharma throughout his life, was guaranteed to be Tenno, Heavenly King Buddha, in the future. That's who he is on the mandala, by the way, right? You go look at the personages on the Gohonzon or the mandala on the threefoldlotus.com website, and you can print out, there's a whole big document, PDF there, on all the different personages that are on that mandala. Just a reminder. Furthermore, a dragon girl, though females were considered incapable of becoming a king of the Brahma heaven, and an Indra, a king of devils, a wheel-turning noble king, or a Buddha, became a Buddha without changing her dragon body. Attainment of Buddhahood by men of the two vehicles and those with fixed natures, Ichantika, who had been considered definitely incapable of becoming Buddhas, was as wondrous as a toasted seed germinating. The scorched seed, right? Flowering and bearing fruit. When Shakyamuni Buddha's attaining enlightenment in the eternal past was revealed, the audience was so astonished as to wonder how a 100-year-old man could be the son of a 25-year-old man. That's how difficult it was for them to understand, perceive that. The 3,000 existences contained in one thought, doctrine, explained that unenlightened beings in the 9 realms and enlightened ones in the realm of the Buddha are one and inseparable, opening the way for the unenlightened to attain Buddhahood. Therefore, each letter of this sutra represents a wish-fulfilling gem, it's precious, that pours out 10,000 treasures. Each phrase of it is the seed of Buddhahood. The preaching of these most profound teachings was not done because of the capacity of the audience, their intelligence to understand, or conviction to uphold them. It was because the time was ripe. The Lotus Sutra, Chapter 2 on Expedience, therefore says, quote, now is the time to expound the Mahayana teaching definitely. And now he's going to go into teaching capacity of the people and the right time with the question and answer format. And I think that's a good place to stop for the next video. So I appreciate this this collection of translations. It's reintroducing things we've already studied, but for many of you, it may be the first time. I mean, there's hundreds of videos on this channel. I don't expect that all of you have seen every single one. But we're talking about Nichiren's doctrine of the Lotus Sutra and how to practice correctly. It, I think, has great value to understand why now and how relatable Nichiren's time at the beginning of our era of 10,000 years, his context, his situation, the type of dialogue and teaching he has to demonstrate in his surroundings, his context, his authoritarian government, his dealings with natural disasters, epidemics, pandemics, all kinds of strife and human warring and violence and greed and backstabbing. Amazing that since 13th century, We are now almost 1,300 to 2,200. Almost 1,000 years separates us. And yet, with all the efforts to spread Buddhism, here we are. We haven't grown a bit. It's not entirely true. But what I feel very confident in saying to you is that even though there seem to be a lot of Buddhists in the world, how few of them are actually practicing the Lotus Sutra correctly? In my own over 40, 45 years of study and practice and witnessing, I've seen an innumerable amount of people practicing incorrectly, all in service to their samsaric life rather than their Buddha life. It boggles my mind. It's the word tragic is so ineffectual when it comes to the weight of this dismal state of affairs. So as our Sangha grows, so does my welling up of appreciation for Nichiren, Tendai, Dengyo, Shakyamuni, all the scholarship. It's just, man, it's so true that it remains. It remains, and it remains because there's always some percentage of human consciousness, of sentient beings, saying, I get this. I get this, and it's important to get this. And I need to tell others about it. I need to influence others toward this goal. If you care about the planet, if you care about your relatives, if you care about your friends, if you care about this life, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Use the resources we have that I've been able to put together on a website with free information, a bookstore, a mandala store. Please, if you don't have a mandala that's an actual recreation or a digital copy of a Nichiren inscribed mandala, not Bob's or Alice's or whatever's, Nichiren. Get one today. They're available online. How much easier could it be? Enshrine it, respect it, give it the posture of your maximal life. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Let's do this right. Or why do it at all? Thank you for your practice. I know it's strong. You guys are amazing. Really. Like I said before, this Sangha makes me so, I well up with, pride's not the right word because it's kind of servile to our desires and wants. It's not that I desire and want that, it's that I see it as the flourishing lotus blossom itself. And as we blossom, so too do we plant the seeds of influence into our environment. So thank you for that. Well beyond me, but for the universe, for this planet, for you and I. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you. Use the resources, download the podcast. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's not for me. It's for this Sangha to grow. It's for YouTube to get its act together to promote this teaching further. Just using the mechanisms we have at hand. What else can we do? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I will see you in the next one. Thank you again for being here. Bye for now.